like, let's give it a try.
All right, let me try that again because I forgot to turn the audio on as I did last week with Nicole.
Oh no.
So there should be audio now. Can you all hear? Okay, so we have audio now. So let me try again. So this is Alexander Hanf on That Privacy Show. This week we have Debra Farber, a good friend and colleague. It's going to be a fiery show. It's not going to be politically correct. There will likely be some bad language. So strap in, put on your seatbelts, do not let your hand outside the vehicle, and get ready for a really interesting ride. Thank you for joining us, Deborah. I always love having conversations with you because there's always no bullshit attached to it. And
Likewise.
I particularly enjoyed the session we did on Clubhouse. I think it was last year, wasn't it? When we did the webinar for, I forget the name of the conference. Was it? Do you remember the name of the conference?
Oh gosh, it was out of Europe, and it was some sort of more of like focused on human rights. I don't remember the name of the conference. I feel
Oh, I
now I
can't
feel
remember
awful
either.
about it.
I can't remember either. But
Um,
I know that we went on much longer than we had intended to, and ended up having to edit quite a lot of it out. But it was a lot of
Indeed.
fun, and it was a really interesting topic. And the shit is still hitting the fan, and it's not likely to change at any point in the near future. So this week we're going to talk a lot about Web3 and the stuff that you're doing since you're no longer at Amazon. You're now working in a lot of the Web3 and Metaverse stuff and DeFi. So we'll talk a bit about that. I also want to talk just generally. So this is going to be very much a fireside chat type discussion. Um,
Excellent.
did you all hear that beep then, or does my email not beep in the stream? I
I did
hope.
not hear it, but
Okay, that's good. They may have heard it on the stream, but hopefully I won't get any
okay.
more. My email's been going crazy today. So first of all, before we get started, I want to talk about this news that's been going crazy all over the press since last night about this report in Vice. I think it was Vice, in relation to Facebook not having any fucking idea where our data is, what they're doing with it, how much of it they've got, and how they can use it. Which I found particularly interesting because this is not something I wrote a piece about it on LinkedIn today. This is not something isolated to Facebook. Every global corporation I've been
Right.
in have exactly the same issues where they want data democratization or data lakes, as they want to call it. But they've got no taxonomy, they've got no data lineage, they have no idea which purposes the data was originally collected for, or whether the new purposes they want to use it for are compatible with those original purposes. It's a
Right.
huge problem, and I see it literally in all these big global companies. And basically, they just want us to go in there and stick a band-aid on it and hope everything's okay. And clearly, that isn't the case. So, whereas it's nice to see this making the press, and it really has made a big splash on Vice and Motherboard last night and today. In relation to Facebook, I think it's also really important to understand that this is not a Facebook issue. This is a general issue with big data and the fact that companies at the moment, they just want all of the data and they don't care what they're going to use it for. They want it, they want to keep it, they want to be able to use it for whatever they want. And if we get in the way of that with laws and regulations, then we're basically interrupting their business and they don't give a shit. So,
Right.
so this is my experience as a consultant. What's your situation here? Do you find the same thing?
It's a great question. I absolutely do find the same thing, and I've found this. I mean, for like over a decade. Like this isn't something new for us to experience. What I think is happening is that the media, it takes them years before they really understand the real story, right? Because generally reporters only report on something that's a story that will actually be like worthy of investigating in a story that is happening right now. So they don't go and say, hey, we're going to go, talk about what like a company's internal data governance is just not a sexy topic. It's not newsworthy. So it's just, maybe you'd have like a someone like yourself, or maybe someone from like EFF or a privacy activist go in and try to argue why some companies should be investigated. But other than that, or other than someone like filing a true complaint and it actually escalating into some sort of regulatory scrutiny, maybe even something like really big, like using biometric data, in against basically when there was a law in Illinois
Mm-hmm.
against uh, collecting biometric
Yep,
data
yep.
without consent, right? So that happened years ago, and is only like surfacing now as potential issue that people are even learning about. And when I say people, I mean like the general public. So yeah, what you and I have seen for like at least a decade, if not longer, is companies that have already grown so big with their, mostly Web 2 companies, right? That went after data because that was that was how they were going to grow their business and grow their money. And so all the business processes were to optimize for advertising, optimize for, data collection, and for these consent, even to get consented data. But the consent is not narrow enough or like specific enough for the purpose, right? And it gets reused as secondary use for so many different things that even within a company, forget about even then when they're sharing it with third parties. And so what I've seen with really, really large companies is that they just, even if they have the right intention of like, yeah, we want to do the right thing, when they realize the size of their problem internally, that data is literally like sprawled everywhere. And you've given engineers in Silicon Valley a tip. It's not just a Facebook thing to move fast and break things. You name your large company, even like Amazon's not in Silicon Valley, but it's similar, that engineers are given real free reign to go and be innovators and move forward quickly without having all the answers. It's encouraged. Of course, ethics and and obsession of the customer is encouraged as well. But like that, who's customer, and like how do you balance against privacy when you as an organization, maybe that it's more of a security minded organization, and
Yeah,
privacy is not well understood at Amazon. I freely will say that it's not. By you name an engineer, they're going to be like, yeah, I don't really know what's going on with privacy in the org. Somebody else is dealing with that. And so what happens is they bring in experts like myself, and then we're super dissatisfied with the lack, at all these companies, but the lack of actual like executive uh, not oversight, but support,
yeah,
right?
buy-in.
We can't just get a person or just get a box of privacy to put a band-aid on something. What happens here is, since you have all this sprawl of data, you need like all hands on deck to try to figure out like what's coming out of the box, so you could
Yeah,
report on it to people. And then it just becomes a game of compliance, of like how quickly can you get that thing out the door, and is it accurate, and all that, as opposed to, can we fix the problem of the sprawl in the first place,
yeah. I
right?
mean, I had a situation. I was in a fairly recent role. I was asked to work with a company on data democratization. I love that term, I really do, because it's not data democratization. It's data
Right,
hoarding and data siloing, right? It's completely different.
right,
But yeah, so they asked me to work on data democratization for them, and that this is a huge global company. They have 27, let me repeat that, 27 generic purposes for processing activities across thousands, if not tens of thousands, of internal digital products. It's what they
it's a
call
lot of
digital
purposes.
products, right? So
Mhm.
27 generic purposes for all of those different processes. Completely unlawful under Article 5 of GDPR when it comes to purpose specification, data minimization, purpose limitation, etc. And I said to
Right,
them, I said, we can't do this. I said, we literally, we don't have the ability to create a data lake, because for you to use a data lake, the whole reason you want to create this is because you want to reuse this data for other purposes. And the purposes you have are so generic and don't meet the requirements of law that it would be impossible to determine whether or not the new purpose is compatible with the old purpose, even if you had that old purpose in the data lineage, which they don't. There's no data lineage
right,
at all. There's no data taxonomy. There's no way of understanding why that data was originally collected, what the limitations were on the use of that data, what legal basis was used for the collection of that data, etc., etc. And in most cases, this particular company were wanting to use legitimate interest for almost all of their legal basis for repurposing of data, using a legitimate interest
gotcha.
balancing test, which was developed in such a way as to make pretty much any purpose compatible. So
Right,
it had been developed in a way which was really easy for the people completing these tests to game the system. They knew what score they had to get to. They knew which answers would give them the best scores, and so on and so forth. So it's
right.
completely redundant as a tool, as a compliance tool, or protection tool. And this isn't the
Right, so that's
first.
just there as
Yeah,
just to show the regulators that you've got something, right? And like,
exactly,
"Look, you're
exactly.
compliant."
Exactly, and I've it's not just this one company. I've seen this countless times, more times than I really want to remember, and it's a big problem. And this really comes down to privacy by design, which we both have a
Yes,
huge passion for, if you don't have that data lineage, if you don't have a taxonomy, if you don't understand why you have the data in the first place and what limitations there are on the use of that data, then you can't reuse it. It's not possible. You're not going to be able to do that in a lawful and compliant way. And I'm seeing more and more of this type of behavior as, yeah, and really a lot of these companies don't even know why they're doing it in the first place. They've just been told by some
Right.
consultant, no, you need to do this, this is really cool. Or they have a developer who finds this really cool third party tool that they want to do for big data analytics or something else. I mean, there was some crazy, I can't talk about specific examples because
Of course.
confidentiality issues, as much as I would love to scream from the rooftops because it's a really serious issue.
Yep.
There's certain things I can't say, but needless to say, it was a hugely problematic area, and I kept raising the issues and I kept raising the points, and my contract was terminated.
And that's it. Sometimes companies really don't want to hear what they need to do to change. I mean, like the thing around privacy is that what I've learned is so hard about it is that so much of it is requiring change of a corporate culture in order to have a culture of privacy around how you handle personal data, and like especially a company that is just dealing mostly with digital assets or
Yeah.
digital, just data, which is most companies these days. There's so much. Um, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought there, but yeah. Anyway, there's so. What did I just say? I parrot it back. I'm still waking up.
You were talking about the culture of privacy within the
Oh
organization.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if culture is the hardest thing to change, like first that needs to change in order to have like an actual culture of privacy within your organization. So without that tone from the top, without executives like, you know, insisting that this behavior change needs to happen and then modeling that behavior and leading the effort, I just think that these efforts to are not going to, like, nothing's going to work, because it seems to be that privacy, like the perception is that privacy folks are giving requirements to basically to engineers that are
Yeah.
hampering their ability to innovate, which is just a result of technical debt that the companies have allowed to go on for so long, and it's just been unacceptable technical debt that at some point is just going to blow up in everyone's faces if they don't fix it. But fixing it means that engineers have to like put attention towards completely changing their infrastructure in some ways, or
Yep.
getting rid of, like, like reworking the way that they work, like, or adding more procedures to understand risk, or to guide the engineer on the appropriate code snippet to use, what library, and all of those things. They need all of that guidance. And what I yeah it's just frustrating, because even what I see companies do is go, well, let's focus for the next 2 years or whatever on the compliance, on the governance, risk compliance stuff, the stuff you need documented, the stuff that you want to get like a SOC 2 certification, right, like against, or that, which is insane to me, because all of this requires that you have like a privacy by design program, privacy engineering capabilities. The only way you'd be able to get to that end state that like SOC 2
Yeah. Yeah.
reports would give. So what I'm seeing is overly give money towards those aims, but then not actually give any money to moving the needle on putting a program in place that actually shifts left for
And it
privacy
has to
within the.
be root to branch.
Yeah.
I've been in organizations and I can talk to people all day, and I can get them to understand why privacy is important. And I do that all the time. It's something that I get a great deal of satisfaction out of, being able to change
Yeah.
culture and change people's awareness of issues. But if
Same.
that doesn't occur throughout the entire organization, then it's wasted energy. I worked for a company, they literally invested millions. I'm talking millions in privacy by design, hiring a whole bunch of privacy experts to come in and work with them on privacy by design. And they weren't doing privacy by design. They were maybe following two principles of privacy by design. And I said to them, I
Right.
said, well, this isn't really privacy by design. It's, well, we're getting there. Well, no, you're not. Because privacy by design requires you to comply with all the principles. If you don't comply with all the principles, then you're not doing privacy by design.
Right.
You're building a house of cards. It's all going to collapse. It's not going to work. Yeah, but we had to still conduct business, etc., etc. We need to keep the product managers happy, etc., etc. I'm like, you're either
Right.
doing privacy by design or you're not doing privacy by design. Don't hire me to
Right.
do privacy by design if you're doing piecemeal, if you're not really serious about it, and if that isn't going to be adopted throughout the entire organization, then it's pointless. I can have a team of 50 people working with me on privacy by design, and they can all be great and they can all understand exactly what needs to be done, but if that buy-in from management at the top doesn't exist, it's a waste of fucking time and it's a waste of fucking money, and it doesn't and
Absolutely.
it
And
doesn't
it's a
do
waste of
anything
our
to move
time.
the needle. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't do anything to move the needle
Right.
at all.
Right, right. What it does, what I think companies are focusing on the rights right now, right? Like, oh, like, a human might sue us in the EU if we don't give them, if we can't provide what data that we have about them back. So let's make sure that we have that process cleaned up because that's like public facing and, individuals can really like scrutinize the process. And so that gets overly engineered, which I shouldn't say is, it's a challenge. Like all of this is hard, especially if you're a really large company, because then a lot of times what off the shelf tools aren't even as helpful because they maybe there's integrations they don't have, and then you need to do more dev work, or you need like it's not easy. Like you could just get a box of privacy and just like plug it in, and then
Because there's no
companies.
marketing for open source, right?
Right. Well, agreed, agreed. And to that end, while the rise of privacy tech is not about open source, innovative software, it is about bringing, privacy innovation to life. So if there is an opportunity to have, I don't know, the rise of privacy tech kind of champion more open source privacy tools, and I think you should talk to Lourdes about that because who runs it for
Yeah.
everybody else, because that our whole goal is to pretty much just have an incubation space for privacy innovation. It doesn't matter if it's commercial or open source. We need tools out there. People want to know about it. It should be in our report each year. So please do reach out to Lourdes.
No, and that's actually a really good segue because I wanted to talk about the rise of privacy tech,
Excellent.
and the work you're doing, and obviously the work that Lourdes is doing. My one complaint is it's fucking expensive. Seriously, to become an
Yeah.
ambassador, I can't afford to become an ambassador of privacy tech. Through the rise of privacy tech, it's what is it, about
Right.
$4,000 or $5,000 or something a year. That's a lot of
It
money.
depends on if you're as a company, if you're joining as a company membership, where the expectation is you could also be, tap into some of these opportunities to promote and get into small curated experiences, Silicon Valley style, like
Yeah, yeah,
investor
yeah.
style, like it's actually on par with a lot of other similar types of orgs, but because in that innovation space, because someone has to pay for it somewhere. I mean,
No, no, I
like,
understand. I understand completely.
right?
Yeah, I just
But
can't afford it. I'm a poor privacy advocate,
right.
right?
Well, I hear you. I mean, for you, so the rise of privacy tech, has several stakeholders, right? First, obviously, is founders who tend to be engineers. I mean, they're not all. Many of them are. Some of them are lawyers. Some of them are, consultants. Have come from different lines of work or
Entrepreneurs, yeah,
straddle
yeah.
fields. But there's three buckets really. It's the stakeholders are the founders, who maybe don't know the privacy tech market that well, so they don't necessarily know all the players, all the people. They need intros. They maybe want to be matched with an advisor, so they would join for, they want investment money, they're raising. These are things that, Trope has been built for to help them along that journey. And there's a free tier for those who are just starting out where you could just still be plugged into the community.
Mm.
And then, if you're not in it, I'll get you in the Slack group because you should be in that. That's free and like part of the community
Yeah, yeah.
that's not. Yeah.
When's the conference?
Um,
Is 6 weeks from now, is it? Somewhere around there?
well, the one in Silicon Valley is
Yeah.
is in June. Yeah, it's like towards the end of June, and then we're having a Web3 conference next week. So
Okay.
I believe it's on Wednesday, and that's
And
just a
it,
half day virtual conference.
yeah,
So
online, yeah.
yeah, easy for that. But the Silicon Valley one, that's going to be at the Rosewood Hotel, which is right on,
Yeah, I know.
uh,
I wish I could be
Soho
there. I
Road,
really
where
want to
all.
get back to Silicon Valley. I miss the sunshine
I
and
hear you.
various other things, but
I hear you. I'm in the Portland, Oregon area now, so
well, that's
I
beautiful as
sunshine.
well, though. Portland, Oregon,
Well,
beautiful.
the sunshine comes out in the summer, so it's
Yeah,
starting to come out now. So,
and you have the redwoods and the
yep.
beautiful ocean view and the whales and everything else. So yeah, I
I know you're
miss.
California dreaming too, because
Yeah,
that's
I
where you
am. I
want to
miss
end
it.
up.
I miss it definitely. It's definitely where I want to
Um,
be in the next 10 years. That's my 10-year plan. Get back to California. Get back to Silicon Valley. Give my
nice.
give my
Well,
wife some well deserved sunshine because she's been in the cold for many years now. She really doesn't like it very much at all. So,
I could relate. I could relate. But I also just want to circle back and say, so there were so there were the founders, but then we also support. Obviously, the founders want to sell their products to buyers. So, like your chief privacy officers, your DPOs, your
yep,
CISOs, whatever. Right? So yeah, the rise of privacy tech. So at this conference in Silicon Valley in June is going to be the first time we finally meet. And convene at a troped, we call it the rise of privacy tech trope, at a troped event in person. It's the first time because this all really happened just before the pandemic that like rise of privacy tech was created.
yep.
So we're all
Yeah,
really
the
excited to.
timing was kind of bucked a bit, wasn't it, with the pandemic?
Yeah, so many things got fucked up there. My own wedding got canceled 1 week before.
No. Oh,
Oh gosh, you don't know this?
no, I
I'm not
didn't
going to
know
make too much
this.
time on. Yeah, I had my wedding was supposed to be March 21st, 2020. We had to cancel it on the 13th. And it's a good thing that we did cancel it because the border was technically closed by the time that it would have been
Yeah,
the
yeah.
wedding. And yet that was my trauma and entryway into the
Have you
beginning
managed?
of.
Have you managed to have the wedding now, or no?
No, I mean, my mom was in New York. Like, how was I gonna, none of my friends, like, it felt like I couldn't plan anything. So we
Yeah.
just didn't plan. And so, no, that's finally coming out of the other side of it now. I mean, we bought a house, we have a puppy. I mean, we're kind of living the life anyway. But it's, yeah, not exactly on the terms I expected. So.
So, how are things going at the moment with regards to Trop? Is the membership growing? Is there a lot of interest? I know I'm seeing a lot of marketing around it, and obviously, I'm very interested in it. But
Yeah,
has
there is.
yeah? So what?
Yeah, I think a lot of the interest kind of supercharged when because it's really hard to get people to say, "Hey, I want to like tap into something that like is still growing, right? Like,
Yeah,
is it
yeah,
worth it and all that." Um, and a lot of the people who are working, as advisors to the rise of privacy tech, we're really seasoned like privacy experts that kind of cross functional as well. So like another advisory roles like myself, like what I do as an advisor to privacy tech companies is another area that we also cater to. It's a stakeholder group of privacy experts that we have available to recommend as advisors. And so after we published recently, if it was several months back, I think it's called like the Troped 2021 like rise of privacy tech, or basically the state of privacy tech.
yeah.
It's basically defining what is privacy tech, quote unquote privacy tech, versus how does that compare to like reg tech, and is it part? We distinguish it's not AI, but AI is an adjacent and enabling technology, right? It's there's so many components of what is making up the privacy tech stacks that we tried to create a visual, or we did create a visual that really like depicts the different and defines the different subsets of privacy tech. And so we did this, obviously we had lots of feedback, and there were multiple, there's a whole bunch of people that were part of the effort in the working group. And you can only be part of the working group if you're a member of Trope. So like once all of that actually was published, it really opened up the floodgates of people being, expressing interest. Those, like for instance, vendors who might be, throwing their weight around like an IAPP report or,
Yeah.
some survey and research data. Before maybe they were like, well, what am I going to get out of joining Trope? But after they saw like, no, we're defining this space. There's no one else really leading in this space who even no organization I've seen like from a Forrester or that type of company that is analyzing the space that really uh, can really explain and pull out like what are the components of privacy tech and what are the trends that we're seeing in that space. And so yeah, after that, like we started getting like just tons of interest. It's put us on, so as that grows and as people see like, oh, we're influencing the market for the good, then all of your expert, all of your I guess smart founders are like, well, I want to be where the innovation's happening because
Hmm.
I want to be seen as a thought leader, right? So like, let's plug into the rise of privacy tech and honestly, like use our marketing budget for that because what startups do have is a budget for marketing, and if they're doing a raise, you should be thinking about things that are going to actually like pitch, actually going to and have somebody look at what you're doing as an organization, as a person, as a founder or founding team member, and say, are they actually like enabling privacy, you want to make sure that you're actually like dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and you're understanding, how you're building out your privacy tech company and not making, major snafus that kind of take away, like that are privacy invasive, like
Mm.
Clubhouse, right?
Yeah. No, I can
um,
I can completely understand the premise behind it. I mean,
yeah,
as you know, I'm on the faculty of Singularity University, which is a controversial decision. I
right,
completely accept. But the reason why I joined the faculty was to be able to have that influence at the core level in Silicon Valley, where many of these
right.
privacy invasive technologies are being developed. So if I can get in there and get in the C-suites and explain to them the importance of data ethics and privacy and all these things that we love to do, then maybe they'll develop their products in a different way, and maybe we can avoid some of these problems from manifesting in the first place. So I completely agree. It's one of the reasons why I love working in Silicon Valley. To be honest, when it comes to Singularity University, it's a shit show. I mean, there's no real interest in relation to privacy and data ethics. They all go to the sessions and they all feel good afterwards and pat themselves on the back, but they go away and they basically do fuck all. So it
Right.
can be seen as a waste of time. But there have been successes as well. I had some really interesting discussions with Blizzard in Southern California and made a good friend on the board there who was really interested in making sure that in the gaming space they do the right thing when it comes to privacy, that they're not monitoring the game chats and
Well,
so
just,
on and so forth.
just to show you that my network is your network, and I can, feel free. I mean, I'm glad to introduce you to my former, CISO at Prime Video. I mean,
Yeah.
he is now CISO at Blizzard. So,
Yeah,
I guess he was like, "Oh, this being federated on a federated security team here at Amazon is just so hard. I'm going to take a harder challenge and go to Blizzard." So
he could have
they've,
perhaps found a better time to join Blizzard. They've not had the best time of late, but that's
I wonder because Blizzard announced that they were being purchased, back right after he just joined. And so I
yeah.
think he might have been one of those key hires to kind of round out the team before like announcing. So I think he probably knew,
Are they going
but
to add Clippy to World of Warcraft? That's what I want to know.
that's a good question. As long as it doesn't show up in Elder Scrolls, I'm cool. Yeah.
So today, actually, you pointed out, or I saw on LinkedIn, a new app for one of the companies that I believe you're invested in or advising, or on the board for.
I'm advising, yeah,
Advising.
Bravado. Hmm.
So they created this new suite or this new command line tool which allows you to determine what apps on an Android device are actually doing with data. And this is part of the announcement which came out today in relation to Google adding these kind of nutrition labels similar to what's been available in iOS for about a year now. I think it was about this time last year that they introduced these.
Yes.
Um, so the first question I have, and it's not related to the company that you're advising, it's related to the announcement by Google. Do we think that Alphabet are going to subject themselves to the same requirements? So, for example, we all know that whenever you have an Android phone, there's a whole bunch of shit installed on that by default, which you, in some cases, can't even remove. There's a whole bunch of Google services which are running in the background. So, when you buy a new Android phone now or do an Android update with these changes in, will it now start to flag all of these things, or this privacy safety report? Will it start to flag these for Google and Alphabet technologies within those devices, or will it only be relevant for non-Alphabet companies? What do you think?
What do you mean by non-alpha? Why would it be relevant to non-alphabet companies before I answer the question?
So at the moment, for apps that go in the App Store, they now have to
Yeah,
disclose all this data, and they have this nutrition label, right? And this comes out through,
right.
it's part of the requirements.
Oh, so I don't have an Android phone. That's why
No,
I'm asking.
I
So
don't. Well, I do, but not one
yeah,
that's modern enough to run modern Android. It's going back to like 2012, and I just keep my crypto wallet on it, so to
that
keep
makes
it air
sense.
gapped. But as I said, Google have a huge amount of apps on Android devices by default.
Right.
The Google Play Store, the keyboard. I mean, there's just loads and loads of them. When you combine them all together, probably hundreds of different technologies within the Android operating system, which are controlled directly by Google. And I'm just curious whether or not we're going to see a whole bunch of notices come up for all of these Google technologies built into
Oh, I
Android,
see.
as well as these third-party apps in the Google Play Store.
Oh, I see. I do. I mean, this is just a guess because I honestly don't know what's going on. How Google's thinking about it, but I do think that because of Google's decision to, get rid of using third party cookies and the death of the cookie and all that is really, it's a major shift in kind of their attitude of like, okay, I guess we need to address this and need to address it publicly and have a good program and not like basically it seems like finally Google's leaning into that instead of trying to protest against some of
I mean,
these
they're
privacy.
really dragging their heels in it, though, right?
Well,
If we look
yeah,
at
they
the
are.
privacy
I,
sandbox and the
I think
cohort,
that's because that they're trying to on the fly come up with an answer,
yeah,
that doesn't hurt their business model as much as they want to, right? So it's definitely a struggle against their own self preservation there,
yeah,
like eating into their own business model. But I think they realize they have to realize that they're smart people that the public sentiment has changed, and if they don't have demonstrably better notices and easier to easier privacy controls and notices and all that, then they're just going to spend so much more time on justifying why they're not, an evil company, as opposed to spending the time on highlighting the ways in which they're privacy protective. And again, I actually think like the problem is Google grew so fast, and in so many ways, it's like now we're just trying to put controls around all of that, and it's not easy to do. Is if it's much easier if you built it by design, right? Like as
yeah,
we know,
yeah.
you get all these constraints by hard, by coding it up things and trying to add privacy and security later. So I do think it would be great if it's not just third party apps, and if Google had their own, they did this data safety report and
Applied the
nutrition
same
labels,
rule to themselves, yeah, yeah.
same rules to themselves. I have a feeling they will do that. I
If they
think it would be really jarring and an obvious thing to point out by like literally any press if they didn't do it themselves. But it's a good question because it is like the app store. It's not preloaded on your phone.
Mhm.
It depends on how they go about doing things.
It's going to be an interesting. Funny enough, they probably face exactly the same problems as we've heard about Facebook in the last 24 hours. And actually, this takes me back to Amazon because, as you recall, probably 18 months ago now, a very similar report came out about Amazon. A bunch of developers blew the whistle and said that Amazon had no fucking idea what was going on with the data or where it was stored as well. So it just
Yeah.
illustrates the fact that this
No,
isn't a
when that came
Facebook issue,
out,
right?
when that came out, I swear to God, I'm like, I think people think I might have been one of the people who gave the because I'm like, these are the things I've been saying to some people within my company, like, here's the problem. And then, like, a month later, it ends up as like a leaked report. And I'm like, it wasn't me, I swear. But yeah, anybody who's kind of been hanging around and sees how data gets used, it's not that it's willy nilly. There is a process. I don't want people thinking that Amazonians are just wandering around, just like think it's just okay to just like, take data from here and put it there. It's really the challenges are that there are so many processes that have to all come together to create like, you know, uh, risk assessments and gating in different areas, and then like what if like one team over here needs access to this, and how do you grant that access, and how do you remove that access, and like all of those things, it's actually really really complicated. And because it's not simple, which it could have been if they architected earlier for this, but like because it's so complex, they all these big companies will not use off the shelf tools. They're just like it, so they're not even starting with, oh great, there's some great tools on the market, let's see if we can bring them in and help. It's always kind of a sense of, no, there's no way another company could possibly understand the complexity of our company and the way that all the workflows and everything that makes everything work. Therefore, we're going to just get our best people on it, do some research, and we'll build something ourselves. And so that's what I see, and I also think it's a mistake, um, because you could get a tool that only works 75% as well to start, that at least you could use right away,
Mm.
rather than saying we're going to do nothing until we've built a tool for 18 months, right? Like it the business has made no progress as that tool is being built. So I end up seeing there's a huge lag behind in compliance at these large companies, because it just becomes a numbers game when you have millions and millions and millions and millions of customers, like some of these companies do, like Google and
And
Amazon.
billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, and you get GDPR. Well, yes, but it is billions of dollars, but I'll tell you right now, I burnt out from doing governance, risk, and compliance stuff. Basically, like, you know, onboarding teams to the tools
It's not
that
fun.
it's so mind numbing
I
that
know.
I'm telling you right now, like people just turn over. Like I was like, I can't even wait 4 more months. I left a lot of money on the table that was part of my package at the 2 year mark, and I couldn't make it 4 more months. I left like 40 grand on the table in stock because I just was so burnt out. It is mind numbing, boring stuff. I felt like my career was going backwards. So who are you going to hire to do this? Because you want smart people who are knowledgeable enough to be able to think on in the moment and be able to plug up some of these things. So they have to have a lot of experience in order to actually succeed. But at the same time, you're just it's just a compliance effort where you're constantly sending out tickets to people to fix their shit, and they're like, you're in our in, you're preventing our us from getting this out the
Yep.
door
Yep.
because you
You're the
want us
bad
to do
guy.
this.
Yeah.
So it basically just pits the governance, risk, and compliance team as the blockers for engineering getting done, and this is just becomes a vicious circle, and nobody wants to really stay in those jobs.
No, I
So
agree. I agree. If I have to sit through one more one trust assessment, I think I'm going to print it out and slice my own wrist with the paper that it comes on.
yeah,
It's
I
it's just
refuse
so
to like.
depressing. So depressing.
So that's why I've made my I saw a narrow opportunity to that the time was now, and this was a year ago, to that I would be safe to leave a job that was paying good money during a pandemic to really focus on privacy tech full time.
That really
Um,
was a batshit crazy decision, if you don't mind me saying, Deborah.
thank
thankfully,
you,
thankfully it worked out, but it was a really,
thank
really
you.
bad time to make that decision.
It was. Well, at first, the first decision was at AWS. I left there just after my whole life was crashing down and the wedding got canceled and all that. That was when I was pretty much told, I basically said, if we don't appoint a single threaded owner for privacy at at AWS, then I would not be successful and I will need to leave. And then my skip level manager informed me that his VP above him, who I didn't get to speak to after they read after they read my narrative, that a whole bunch of us, including engineering and just
Yeah,
other people, have written about, what we should be putting in place. I was pretty much told that, we'll handle this as like, two projects within security assurance, which is the team I was embedded in, as opposed to setting up a separate program with,
yeah.
key leaders. And I said, all right, well then, then my manager's like, let's help you find another role at Amazon. So really what they did is just push me to somebody else's problem at Amazon. So
Sidelined.
at that point in time, I was literally like, okay, I'll find a new role. And that's how I ended up at Prime Video on a new on a great I had a great experience with the team at Prime Video. It's just that the work was just unending. And then when we asked for lots of support, we didn't get it. So it's just like, well, nobody got all the headcount they wanted, and it's like, this is not like for an engineering program. This is like, we need this,
Yeah, yeah. This is
Anyway,
core. This
so
is a core team we need. This isn't a nice to have. Yeah.
right, exactly. So yeah. So anyway, so for me, it was. I really just don't think that large organizations really understand the privacy narrative well. I do think that a lot of engineering focused teams think, especially like in cloud, think that privacy is about, talking about encryption and whether you have, your cloud deployed in a certain region, based on what borders you're at. Like, I think that the whole, connection with data governance and needing to understand where the personal data is and all, like, I think it's just is not well understood in organizations,
Mm.
uh, in the largest ones at least.
Well,
It's still really a challenge.
let's get on to Web3. So, I mean, to me,
Let's do it.
Web3 is like, I don't know, it's like a new variant of COVID. It came from fucking nowhere. All
I
of a
know.
sudden, we've got Web3 in our faces everywhere, the metaverse everywhere, because Zuckerberg wants it to exist, right?
Oh,
So,
I'm sitting.
if Zuckerberg wants it to exist, then that's it. The entire world suddenly pivots. Oh, hang on a second. We have a message from Matty Two Shoes. No one agrees on what privacy is because privacy is an individual choice and decision what it means. Actually, that's an interesting point, Matthew, because there is actually no definition of privacy, no
Mhm.
agreed definition of privacy. It's something that we worked on for many years at Privacy International, because it is very personal and it's very difficult to define
It's contextual.
in a generalistic way. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
you're
it's
absolutely right.
contextual.
but that's how it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be conceptual. I really like, by the way, the concept of the ink in the water for the whole data lake thing with Facebook, etc., because it illustrates to me, obviously, as that ink disperses, it becomes more and more transparent. So you lose the context, and that's exactly what the problem is. The context behind that data disappears because it gets diluted
Right.
by everything else that's in there. But that's besides the point. Let's go back onto Web three.
Yeah, yeah,
Web three, the metaverse or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I was playing around in Web three back in about 2005 when I first started playing Anarchy Online, which was my first MMO. And Second Life probably a couple of years later than that. That to me is the metaverse. That's really the beginning of the metaverse.
right.
And now we have a bunch of script kiddies who are saying no, Web3 is all about NFTs, Web3 is all about crypto. So I mean, you're
Yeah.
very embedded in the Web3 community at the moment. You tell us what you think or what your definition of Web3 is.
Yeah. So okay, I think that I'll first say that the definition that I think most people think of it as, when they talk about Web3, I mean, so it was pretty much like came about from like what, as someone from Andreessen and Horowitz, right? Like Chris Dixon or
Yeah, yeah.
who, so it basically, the current working definition of Web3 is one that I just don't really think is the right emphasis. It's kind of emphasized on like, using these new business models to kind of decentralize and democratize um, governance over how people get their services. Because by using distributed ledger technology or blockchain or some of the new technologies, like I like to refer to it as Web3 technologies, and
Yeah.
that's what I refer to. And I want to make that distinct from Web3 as a concept, because right now it's a marketing buzzword that means a lot of things that it really shouldn't mean. So it's we had the Web 1, right? Was the basically the static, web page. You could go to it and read something. That's about it. Or you
1992.
could,
Yeah.
you know, then we're able to like, have more dynamic content and, we and be able to share more. And that's kind of more of the Web 2 world.
1999.
Yeah, right. Where
I
we became the
remember the years. I do.
you were partying like.
Yeah, I was. I was in 1999. I was in an internet cafe in Virginia, designing their Web 2 website in a really innovative way. It was way ahead of its time. For croissants and coffee because I didn't have a visa. I was illegally in the US at the time.
Oh
So,
my God.
so the only way that I could survive was to design websites for an internet cafe called Living La Vida Mocha in Charlottesville in Virginia.
That is and in Charlottesville, that's so random. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I remember
Living
the I
La
remember
Vida
the years
Mocha.
very specifically.
I'm never gonna let you live that one down. Partly because I love it so much. I just want to like say it. Okay, so so for me, what's so great about quote unquote Web3 are the Web3 technologies. And I think we can talk about those, but I think that's what we keep getting away from when people talk about Web3. They're talking about business models that are unlocked. And so what we're seeing is like, oh, there's a technology called NFT. It's it's basically just tokens, and each token, a non-fungible token, just means that it's unique from another token. We do this, we have non-fungible tokens today. It's just not deployed in the same way. When we do tokenization for EMV credit cards and
Yeah.
the EMV chip, it tokenizes, it sends a token along with your credit card info. So to make sure that, that you're authenticating the card that
Without
they're
saying who
folding.
you are, just saying that you're the person that the card thinks you are. Yeah.
Right, that the
Yeah.
card is the real card.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
That the card is the authenticated card, and it's not just somebody who took the card number down and is trying to make a purchase. You
Which is
now need to
actually
have that.
really cool as a privacy enhancing technology. I mean, Microsoft started working on this way back in around 2004, 2005,
Yeah.
working on these types of identity systems, tokenization, which would protect the personal data of the individual and only provide the verification which is specifically needed. So, like age verification, for example, if you go and buy alcohol, instead of saying what your age is or who you are, it just says via a token that you are of a legal age to buy alcohol, which is a great
Which is
tool from a
great.
privacy preserving
Zero
perspective.
zero knowledge
Yep.
proofs, or you could do it in other ways as well. I mean, it's great. And I was at Visa working on their public policy team, where I oversaw security, cybercrime, privacy, risk, all of that. And so when we were working on the EMV rollout at that time. That was a lot of what I was doing, working on. Uh, what was I going to say? Uh, Oh yeah, we used to talk about it, and you'd love this. In that one of the goals was right because criminals want to go where the money is, and now that we were using EMV chips, we knew that everybody was going to be moving online to do more, card not present transactions
Mm-hmm.
because where you don't need the token. And so one of the ways in which we would kind of talk about the need for tokenization is devaluing your data. So instead of having like a database of like jewels, right? Here's all the uh, all our amazing assets that you could go steal, criminals. Instead of having that centralized store of like actual data, it's tokenized, and therefore, if somebody had breached that database, it would be obviously you'd need new tokens again, but it would. It wouldn't be a privacy problem, and it wouldn't actually hurt any individual, or go back to anyone's identity. So I just love that because it's really like narrowing your privacy attack surface almost. And I like I'm sharing with you the fact that we called it data devaluation.
Mm.
So it really liked kind of the perception of how do we kind of really protect the data. And so to that end, what I'm excited most about for Web3 is in a similar way to how EMV has helped, sure, it's a security capability, but how EMV stays, the token will actually live on your phone, like if you used Apple Pay or if you use Google Pay or any of those kind of things, the token lives on your phone. It's not so that you're not sharing the information you don't need to share with any
Yeah.
merchant you're
Yeah.
buying something with. And so what's going to happen is, what we're working on right now is self-sovereign identity standards. And the real big privacy play for me when it comes to anything, whether it's the metaverse, which is really just, rebranded XR at this point, because there's nothing new, technologically that should make it a metaverse today
Mm-hmm.
versus XR yesterday. So anyway, besides all of the marketing and attempts to show like we're completely already doing something different, there's still, the standards groups are still working together cross-functionally to come up with the standards that will officially be used for these new technologies and parts of the Web3 stack. So what self-sovereign technology is going to unlock is that instead of companies being the arbiters of our identity, where we log in with, whether it's, log in with your Facebook, Google, Twitter identity, which actually gives them more data about how you're behaving on the web. It's actually privacy invasive in that way, even though it gives you an authentication into something. We could control our own keys. And obviously it has to be made user friendly, but like right now we're working on just getting the standard kind of you know finished and then agreed upon, and people are working towards solutions in so many different ways. But what we're doing is we're putting humans at the center of control over their own data. And so this will open up completely new business models, of course, because now it empowers us to have a little more control, right? Like we know what we're doing with our own data, so companies will have to incentivize us to share. We'd have to trust them to want to share. We would, people want more, a piece of the pie, a piece of the economy. You look at something like Facebook, where they say that they're going to take like 50% of the profits of NFTs sold in their metaverse. And it's just like makes me laugh hysterically. They're never going to succeed. The entire push to, Web3 and the metaverse is really like a call for to get away from the control of surveillance capitalists like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it's just incompatible with Web3 mentality, or people who are into crypto, right? A lot of the ideology behind that is very strongly libertarian, of like, I want to be in control of my own things, and like, minimize interactions by intermediaries, regulators, whatever. And so there's like a really strong ethos that you'd have to fight against. And I just think there's too many overlapping people in those camps that want to play in the metaverse, who also want everything decentralized. They want more ownership. These are the promises that Web3 is supposedly bringing with new business models and new economic business models, is to enable creators to keep so much more money of their creations, and just maybe give 2% or 3% of it to maybe the decentralized platform that has given them the boost, that has
Yeah.
given.
I mean, my concerns are, and this sounds very similar to Tim Berners-Lee project around pods. I'm not sure if you were following that a couple of years back. I actually ran one. It was never going to take off as a widely adopted thing because it was just too geeky. You had to be a real geek to set
Right.
the things up and maintain them, right? So
There
this,
are a few business models that I'm like, this works
yeah,
technically,
yeah,
but
they're not
yeah,
going to be widely adopted because. But my concern is, and I've discussed this many times, and I've probably discussed it with you in the past as well, is when you start to give people control of their data, and and companies then want to commoditize that data, we have a very strong risk, and I talked about this with Dara in the first session that we did as well. We run this very strong risk of creating a dual class system for fundamental rights, particularly privacy and data protection, where companies will start to demand access to data in order to access their services, unless you can
right,
pay a substantial amount of money. So if we look at the business model of paywalls and newspapers, if you wanted to subscribe to every newspaper or every decent newspaper, you're going to literally be spending hundreds of dollars a month based on the fees of these
right.
paywalls, right? The pricing is just completely out of this world. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. So for many people, that isn't accessible. For people who are wealthy, then sure, yeah, they might be able to afford to drop a couple of $100s a month on the newspapers they want to read online, another couple of $100s a month on the media streaming services they want to use online, like YouTube
Yeah,
or Netflix, etc. But for the vast majority of people, the people who aren't in that 5%, this is not attainable. So the only way they'll be able to afford these services will be to give up their personal data, to give up their right to privacy. So that's my first and my biggest concern when it comes to these types of systems. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily the way that Web3 is going to work, but certainly there's the risk that it could go down that road. My other concern is people don't want to manage their data. I've been doing this a long time. You've been doing this a long time. How many people have you said want to go home at the end of their busy day at work, deal with their screaming kids, get the dog for a walk, do the laundry, and then sit down and decide which of the 500 companies they're going to visit online this week should be able to
right.
access and process their data? Nobody wants to do that shit. We don't have the time, we don't have the energy, we don't have the, well, me and you probably do, but most people don't have the technical expertise or the legal expertise to understand what the consequences or the impacts of these decisions might be. So these are my two biggest concerns, that we need to make sure that when we move into this new regime, this Web3, which is supposed to be, and by design should be more privacy friendly, right? The whole idea of
Yeah,
distributed systems, the whole
should
idea
be,
of
but it depends on
tokenization,
who's designing it. Yeah.
yep, the whole idea of tokenization, all of these things are designed to enhance privacy. Bless you. I
Thank you.
presume that's hay fever allergies.
Yes,
Yes,
not
I
COVID.
have the same issue. But we need to make sure we don't walk in the same footsteps that we left with Web 1 and Web 2. We need to make sure that
100%.
we protect these rights, that we make sure that business models aren't developed to exploit and create this dual class system, right?
You're absolutely right. And in fact, I one of the reasons that I jumped into Web3 so fast was that uh, I saw it as being able to solve a whole bunch of privacy problems if architected right. Uh, because okay, so first I'll go with visibility, because you so we people need more visibility into how their data is
Yeah,
being, collected and used, and like, so there are companies trying to show you and help visualize what that data looks like. And I work with one called Rita, uh, personal data. It's in the EU, available in the EU's app store. And they started with, we want to help consumers visualize their data. We want them to see the value of the data that's currently being collected by companies, and then enable them to make choices and take control over that. But I agree with you, it's a challenge to get people to take the time to pretty much do like data hygiene of their own work. I mean, if you looked at my inbox right now, I don't want to even tell you, I am not the person that has zero unopened messages. There's like a really large number there that I've just learned to like not look at and ignore the number. It's kind of the same, here, right? Like
15,876 I'm showing there on
yeah,
my
like I
camera.
can't be bothered reading every single privacy policy and reading every right. So things have to get easier and more streamlined, and like rules can operate in our own favor. Like the same way you can make a browser kind of have act based on certain rules. You could
Yep.
do the same thing if you had that browser on your phone, or if you had a wallet, or like there's so many ways that this can actually manifest, and it's gonna take years before it's user friendly, and it's something that I think like really takes off. All these Web3 technologies, while they're all game changing in their own right, all of them, even NFT, I think is game changing, right? And you could use it for privacy as well. You could use it to like demonstrate your own or represent people's
Personal data. You could
privacy
have personal
rights.
data as an NFT, right?
I'm sorry.
You could have personal data as an NFT.
You can. I
Yeah.
don't recommend it, but
No.
you could. Yeah. You know. Um, and so so with that, visibility is one thing that we're lacking, and you're right, and as is interoperability, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
all supposed to have data
And
portability
portability.
too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so these are challenges companies are working on, not companies, but like privacy tech companies are working on that I think we're going to start to see over time. There's one company I have no affiliation with other than I do a lot in the Hedera Hashgraph competitor to the blockchain space. There is a company that called Drop that
I know
Hedera
drop. Yeah.
enables. Oh, you know Drop? Okay. So Hedera enables microtransactions at a really, really, really cheap rate, just a fraction of a penny. And so you could use these microtransactions just for like accounting purposes
Yeah.
for your, for like it could be really great to follow the data, so to speak, or to have metrics and whatnot without actually, using personal information. But what Drop does, so Drop is using Hedera to be able to allow for microservices from a subscription. So you could pay by the article, pay by the page.
Mm.
So if you're medical research, compendium or something, you could, instead of someone having like a $10,000 subscription at a university, maybe you can empower now individual like students to be who are not at a university or whatever to be able to pay by the page or pay by the I don't know, some smaller amount, pay by the chapter
Yeah.
even.
Yeah.
And then this way, it's people based on the context of what people want and need that you can kind of right size a package fit for them, as opposed to no, you need a monthly subscription or an annual subscription, and those are your only choices. And by the
This is
way,
really useful as well, because I mean, one of the things that I've noticed over the past, I would say 20, maybe even 25 years now, is the cost of producing data has significantly decreased. I mean, exponentially decreased over the past 25 years. But the cost of accessing data has increased, right? So if
right,
you, as we just said, if you want to, have a bunch of streaming services to be able to have the broadest access to media, then you're going to be dropping a couple of $100 a month. If you want to have access to all the newspapers or the journals, you're going to be dropping, in some cases, particularly for journals, you might be dropping thousands of dollars a month.
right,
Yet the cost of producing that is almost nothing. It's negligible. The original product,
right.
creating the content, has a cost to it, but the continued distribution of that content is minimal from a cost perspective.
Right.
So I think it's really important to have companies like Drop come along, and there are a couple of other companies in this space as well, in order to be able to provide access to information at an affordable price. And we're talking fractions of a penny in some cases on some of these
Yeah.
subscription models, which
So,
does
so
make
this
things
is
much
where I
more
think new
equitable.
business models are
Yeah.
exciting. I mean, like I really do think that it opens up more flexible ways by using. I mean, I know we didn't dive into like distributed ledger technology and blockchain today, but
Oh, we
using.
can go on a bit longer. We don't have to finish unless you're in a hurry to get away.
Well, I'm supposed to have my meeting with Privado, but I'll just tell them
Oh,
I'll
they're
do it when
fine. Just tell me you're talking to me. I've got a meeting with them next week anyway. So
exactly. I'll just tell them why. They'll be okay with it. Um, so so one of the okay, so what I did want to say is these technologies are so exciting to me. And what pulled it all together, besides the self-sovereign identity stuff, where it is going to put humans at the center of design. And instead of, hey, what's a good business model we can make money? I really do think the future is going to be, what is a good business model that is going to benefit humans?
yeah,
How do we make that, based on all these other like architectural and design principles, like ethical? And then it's going to be like, oh, whatever, how much can you make in the margins? Because everything has to be about like benefiting the human. Right now, it's not. Web 2 is about pretty much exploiting the user,
yeah,
the consumer, and we just need to get back to like, no, privacy is about individual human problems, and got a threat model for that. And so the game changing thing for me from a data protection perspective is that I had come from working as privacy strategist at Big ID, as you know, right? And Big
yes,
ID is a data discovery company, enterprise grade, where they really did like, came to market with innovation on how to find all the personal data that's sprawled across an organization, whether, no matter the data source type. And so obviously they've had tremendous success there. Um, but I actually do hope for the day, and I do believe there will be a day where that technology is no longer even needed, because by architecting correctly in the first place, and by putting some things on blockchain for accountability purposes, not personal data itself necessarily, but tokenized data, or
Yeah.
hashed data, whatever, that is just there so that you could prove uh, you know, that it hasn't been tampered with. And anyway, it becomes an entire, like, an instant accountability software. You're looking at where all your data is right now. You're not looking at a snapshot that some consultant put together, or your dashboard from last month. Like, you're looking at the current state of you know, um, your engineered like system of personal data. And I'm not seeing in clear text and all that, but like where it lives, where you could find
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And because that's all just, you've got all the data governance aspects up front, you don't need to like go to a sprawl and find all the data and like put the genie back in the bottle to like tell the story about where the data is or how it's being used, because it's just all instantly available. And that's, to me, as a person who's come from the GRC space, as a person who's been in corporate America for like 16 years now, trying to make change. It's like, this is like magic in that. I mean, obviously there's a lot that needs to get done, like in the way, like all the different innovations to make these things happen. But the tech is there, and this is a privacy enabling tech that I really think is going to make companies more accountable, because the tech is there. There's no reason they can't demonstrate to the world
And
that
if it's
their accountability.
distributed and not siloed, they can't hide it, so everybody knows what's
There you
going
go.
on. Yeah.
It's tamper right. They can't hide it. It's everything's like fairly ordered. There's there it's it depends. It's immutable, but it can be mutable. It's just it leaves a trail anyway, so it's
Yeah.
not like you wouldn't see it. But there's all these other benefits, and then when you add identity and you add self sovereign identity to this, where it would allow somebody to say, no, stop sharing my data, and then like that data is no longer able to be used internally at that company for whatever purpose, because like you pressing a button actually did something,
Yeah. Yeah.
it actually controlled that this data needs to now be deleted, or so by there's more programmability at this network
And there's
level
more
that
verification as well. One of
yeah,
the big problems we have at the moment is we tell a company not to do something, we have no idea whether they're doing it or not. We just take
right,
their word that they're either not doing it or they are doing it, right? So there's no way to verify that.
right.
Um,
And so the entire goal of Web3 technologies, the entire goal, and this is the story that's not it's not being framed this way, is to bring trust to the internet.
exactly.
um, we didn't have privacy and security requirements built into the original web, because the whole point was to share things. Like, that was it, to share things across great distances for cheap. And mostly like researchers and universities were and the DoD were using it at first, right? Like, we weren't thinking, hey, we're building this amazing thing for the future and everyone's going to be using it, and let's make sure it's safe.
We were just fucking around.
That Yeah, I mean, it was just
We were.
POC stuff,
Yeah.
right? Why not fuck around?
I
I mean,
remember spending days searching through FTP archives at Washington State University, or messing around on Archie and Gopher and finding all sorts of new information. But sending the full archive of ASCII cows to Bill Clinton after his first 100 days in power, and all these fun things that we were doing back then in the early 90s.
I love it. So
There was no
cyberpunk.
long-term plan. It was just we were just muddling our way through, right, as hackers do.
Right. And so kind of that's what's happening now, except we're bringing a lot more people who aren't even like as technically savvy necessarily, or aren't, different types of hackers, let's say, more trying to make something happen or see if they can do a new thing. Like, so many people are coming from this as, oh, look, there's a new business model that I can use to this new technology, NFT. Oh, look, you can make art NFTs, and here's how other people have been successful. They do this, they get a, they do a limited run of 10,000 PFPs. They, player profile photos, basically. So individual just pictures of like 8-bit pictures. They'll do have a Discord server where it's like, how many Discord servers could somebody be part of without losing completely like a handle on what's going on in all the communities? I'll tell you, not that many, because I went down this rabbit hole to understand it. And
You're
I
talking to
made
a
a lot.
guy who spent 10 years connected to about 15 different IRC
I
networks
bet.
all the
I
time.
bet.
So,
And I get a lot of that from my like So my fiance, who's a ethical hacker himself, so like he tells me, I took me to 2800 like meetup once and
Yeah.
like, freakers and stuff. Like it's fun cyberpunk stuff. Like I get it. You're like old school, like, you've been doing it for a long time. But what's happening now is you're getting really people who don't have that perspective and background, who haven't seen the things in the past, maybe because they weren't paying attention, or maybe because they're too young.
Yeah.
But we've got like young, I want to even say kids, but also adults who are like, oh, here's a business model where I'm seeing other people make money. I'll do the same thing, and they just don't understand. Like they look at like the business model aspect. Someone's making money this way. Oh, look, here's decentralized finance. You put money in a magic box and it spits out more money. And oh yay, we just keep getting money. And like these, who is not gonna be attracted to
Yeah.
that? So
Yeah.
I'm worried that, there are a lot of pitfalls, there are a lot of scams, there are a lot of insecure wallets and exchanges, and like, security is not top of mind for most of these people. And what's crazy is there's this misunderstanding that because you're using secure networks, that the networks themselves are super secure, that you don't have to think about security when you're building your DApp or your minting site or
Hmm.
whatever it is you're building for, on Web3 technologies. And I think that's the danger. And what's happening is people are conflating all of Web3, like they're conflating the point of view, almost like the Andreessen Horowitz point of view of Web3, of just dumping like shit tons of VC money into these companies that, the VC, it just goes to like network effects and just trying to bring more people into that particular fiefdom of this new business
I
model.
mean,
But you're still like,
the
what is it?
good thing there is Horowitz might lose a shit ton of money, which would be a good thing for the world in my mind.
I
But
agree. I
neither of us
mean,
are a fan of their ethics.
after Clubhouse and after, I mean, like the irony there too is that like they're one of the companies that like created the problems by with Web 2
Yeah.
by, software's eating the world and platforms are everything. And therefore, let's uh, just give, basically enable surveillance capitalism and think
Yeah.
it's okay because like, no one's
Not just
stopping
enable
it.
it, make surveillance capitalism the
Yeah.
only
And now it's like,
viable
oh,
business model, right?
we can't grow those markets anymore now.
Yeah.
We can't grow those social media markets anymore without too much resistance and too much lawsuits and whatever, as so why don't we go and just tear down the Web 2 stuff by saying that there's this Web 3? Let's empower the people that we disenfranchised in Web 2.
Yeah.
Like I just can't see, Chris Dixon is super, super smart on Web3 and he's interesting. And I follow him on Twitter and all. And he's the one that's, he's the Web3 leader of the vision over at, I believe, over at Andreessen Horowitz. But at a certain point, it's like, got to be a little self reflective and be like, come on, you're the one that,
Yeah, we
your
kind of
company,
fucked it
your
up already.
organization is the one that enabled this.
Yeah.
And, take some accountability, say how you're going to do things different, set the vision. Like I'd have a lot more respect. But right now it's just
Don't dump
like,
$100 million into Clubhouse.
yeah, and then you just get hero worship
Yeah.
from, mostly young men going, "Oh my gosh, Musk! Oh my gosh!" Like, "Oh, Andreas and Horowitz! Oh my gosh!" Like, it's instead of going, "Hey, you know what? Like, there needs to be some accountability, so you don't fuck over our generation like you fucked over the last one."
Yeah.
Like so that's why I feel compelled to just kind of be that voice in this space because, well, first of all, there's a chorus of people going like Web3 sucks and Web3 is dangerous and everything's scary. And like, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt put out there. And I welcome it, but I don't feel like it's balanced. It's like, oh, all cryptocurrencies suck and there's no good reason for them ever is a valid point, but you'd get a lot more,
There
you'd
is
make your
a
enemy of your enemy your
yeah.
friend if you actually like said something a little less inflammatory and was like, most of them are a problem because of this,
There's a lot
but
of
here's how you
politics
can do it
around
right.
crypto, so
Yeah.
you need to take that with a pinch of salt. But there is pretty bad news in the press on an almost daily basis,
Oh yeah.
particularly around crypto and NFTs, lapses in securities, people having their NFTs stolen, and so on and so forth. So that can be problematic. But
Yes.
we don't have long left, so I'm going to just ask you a couple more questions before we finish. The first one, back to TROPT and the rise of private tech and Web3. What would
Yeah.
you say are the 5 top businesses in the privacy tech space that you're involved in currently to watch? Which are the 5 most interesting and emerging technologies for privacy coming through currently?
Okay. Well, so if these are the ones I'm involved in, then then it makes it easier. So the first I'd say is Pravado. So Pravado is a team that I've been working with for close to a year now, and they've been laser focused on bringing to market a privacy engineering tool, for, basically a dev priv ops tool that will enable developers within a company to scan their code for to find potential privacy, uh, you know, problems that and then guides you on how
Hmm.
to fix those challenges. So and it's looking at all your integrations to understand like what where you might be sharing data, and so it's finding, I think, like matching like code snippets and stuff to be able to kind of like give you a picture of where I'm not doing it justice. You should all look at
I,
Pravado.ai.
as you know, I'm a huge fan of Fides by Ethica, and this to me, Pravado
Yeah.
seems like a really good supplement to Fides. So you've got your
Mhm.
Fides in there for your privacy engineering, privacy by design, and then you've got your Pravado to actually verify that what's been done in Fides has actually worked in the end product. So I see there's a huge potential market there and a lot of interest, particularly for me as somebody who does a lot of research. Being able to, one of the biggest problems when you're doing privacy research is mobile apps. It's very difficult to get into that ecosystem and analyze what they're doing, right? But
Right.
if you can scan the code using tools like Pravado, and if you're using tools like Fides from Ethica to do privacy by design, then that makes it a lot easier for people like myself and other researchers to be able to know what apps are doing. At the moment, it's largely a closed system. It's very difficult. There are a few tools out there, but unless you're starting to use things like Wireshark, sniffing all the traffic that's going in and out of the device on a virtual network that nothing else has access to, it's very difficult to understand exactly what's going on, what SDKs are being used, what data is being shipped around all over the place without your knowledge. So I love that. Okay, so Pravado number one. What's number two?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'm actually like, oh gosh, I'm working with so many here, so let me like go look at my list. Um, so number two, okay. So number two would be, um, gosh, do you think I could say privacy check?
Oh, you can, since we're both on the
Yeah.
advisory board there. I've been on the advisory board at
Right,
Privacy
right. So
Check
we're
since
both on the advisory board of
2016. Yeah.
Privacy Check, right? And so
Yep.
Privacy Check is coming out with a new product that they're announcing on Thursday, I called Consentive.
Yep.
And so that maybe I'll just leave it as you could go look up Consentive today. There's an E at the end of it. I keep spelling it without an E at the end, and Roy keeps telling me like you got to fix that. But so Consentive is a new product from Privacy Check that uses Hedera Hashgraph's DLT
Yep.
and is using microtransactions basically to validate to validate that there was a consent uh, for purposes of displaying advertisements. So you
Yeah.
can compensate people for viewing ads. So the goal is to actually help publishers um, become compliant pretty much immediately. Where right now in the EU, the direct marketing or the current way of doing business that the marketers that advertisers have been delivering ads has been deemed
You're talking about TCF by the IAB.
that's it. It's
Yes.
easier for you to actually say that. It's your world. So the IAB's mechanism that the industry had been using in the EU is declared unlawful, and
Yep.
so quickly, publishers need to scramble and get their houses in order. And this is, Consentive is kind of the solution for that. And so we're really excited when that gets announced on Thursday, how that's going to take off.
I'm
And let's
glad you
see.
said that because I haven't read enough about it because I've been too busy. So, despite being on the advisory board since 2016, I'm not fully up to date with Consentive. I'll have to do some more looking into it. But yeah, it definitely
Yeah,
sounds
yeah. Well,
interesting.
I'm really excited because on Thursdays there should be a big push because the HBAR Foundation is announcing that they're giving a grant,
Yeah.
and I know that Roy won't mind that I mentioned this.
No, no,
It's
no.
more, yeah, he won't. He's giving me the authority to kind of tell people, even though it's a public forum, because we know it's coming.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so then I'll go with two more. Um, Another one is DID. So a company called DID originally came out
Which I've
and
also
was,
advised, thanks to you.
yeah, yeah, that's right. Are you still, or was it was more of a contract thing?
Yeah, it was a short term thing. It was all
Yeah,
around the conference that they were being involved in. So they were on a panel at the
awesome.
conference. Yeah.
So DID originally came out as privacy tech, but then they pivoted to being more of what they're calling creative reality. But in the end, what they ended up developing is ethical deepfakes. And
It's
so,
super interesting. I mean,
right?
there's a lot of controversy because there was a
As it should be.
they created a product around bringing dead relatives back to life through deep fakes. I don't like to use the word deep
I
fake because it sounds
know.
negative, but
We
you
were
know,
using a driver
there
video.
was a huge amount of controversy around that, and I couldn't understand why. I mean, if somebody wants to reanimate their dead loved ones, then what is the problem? It's their
Yeah,
choice, right?
so I think that's just more of a what we call like uncanny valley, right? Where it just feels weird to us. It's a new concept. It feels like weird. Here's like I did it with my dead dad. He's been gone 16 years now, and then there he is, like seemingly moving and making facial expressions based on a driver video, and it's weird, and not everyone needs to love it, but many other people have been like really moved by seeing family members or a lost loved one from years ago. But it's not even only dead people, right? Like to reanimate, this could be
Yeah,
used as like you could see reanimate like a photo of like I don't know Tesla and Nikolai Tesla can
yeah.
be standing there talking to you in a museum about the invention that's right there. That so this is being used for ethically good educational reasons or uh, most notably reenactments for in the film industry. So during
Which is
COVID,
really
it was,
useful because I mean, for example,
yep,
if an actor dies in the middle of filming a movie, say Paul Walker, for example, from the Fast and Furious, R.I.P.
right,
Tragic loss. I mean, in that situation, they had to bring his brother in, who looked very similar to him, and then do
right,
some changes in real time in the studio graphically to make them look even more alike. But that would have been tremendously difficult. Not just difficult for the film crew and for the producers, but I suspect probably really difficult for Paul Walker's brother because he was stepping into
right,
some big shoes. He'd lost his brother, so
absolutely,
obviously he was dealing with that loss as well. And he had all the emotion from the rest of the team on the crew as well. The rest of the people in and we love the movies, by the way. We're
yeah.
huge
I,
fans
I
of the
never
Fast and
saw
Furious
them
movies.
until Christmas. I watched all of them, and I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me that the
Yeah,
Fast and the Furious series was that good? I
no,
didn't
no,
realize it was
we
that
love them. We love
good.
them. But I mean,
Yeah,
this is really important. This is a really interesting and useful way for film studios to be able to continue to create content that people love. So if you think, for example, Lord of the Rings, or the Harry Potter series, can you imagine if Dumbledore had actually died halfway through filming the Harry Potter series? That everybody
right.
would have been devastated, and that would have been a pretty difficult thing to overcome at that time because we didn't have the technology then, right? This is a relatively new
Yeah,
technology. So there's a lot of benefits. Obviously, technology can be used for bad things. We know that. But technology is agnostic. Technology doesn't make decisions. We make decisions how to use it, right? So
right.
I think a lot of the moral panic around things like DID are misplaced, and really there should be more understanding.
Yeah, I think the moral panic is misplaced, and honestly, I think it goes away quickly too. I think what people are most scared of is deep fakes and being able to determine whether something they're looking at has been altered or not,
Yeah,
and that's reasonable. And so that's the guidance I gave to DID and why I brought you on board too. Was look, people are going to be afraid of this, so we need to make it distinctively different and
exactly. So we came up
ethical.
with the idea of
Um,
watermarking in some way to make
right?
it
How do you
clear
have a
that this is
watermark?
yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
to make it clear that this is created, not real. Yeah, and that way people have an understanding that what they're watching is something which has been created, and they don't get
Right,
confused with it being real. And
right,
that
and then yeah. Sorry,
and
go
then they were
ahead.
looking at standardizing that and creating. I mean, their entire mission statement is
Industry.
based around this, right? The
Yes.
manifesto is to make sure that this technology is used for good and is used safely, and you have to applaud that.
Right. Absolutely. In fact, when they first kind of came out to market and became a real big deal, like real quickly, it blew up on the scene when they first started uh, that project with myheritage.com and added so much to MyHeritage's value. Um, uh, that DID, I kind of watched the conversation happen, and I'm like, you guys need to become the leaders in this ethics. Like, you need to, like, otherwise, if you don't, someone else is going to you need to put constraints in place up front in your business that you can't later on be like yeah, we didn't want to do that, but we put it in our contract anyway because we want to get the contract. Like
Yeah,
you need to like any company that's in a space that they need to distinguish what they're doing is ethical versus what
this needs
others
to
might
be
be
a
doing is not.
differentiator. Yeah,
You need to not only be able to differentiate it, but be able to like have those constraints up front. So when your sales team and your CEO and your, product, when you're all sitting there going, should we do business? Should we do this? Should we sign this contract? That the rules and the ethics that everyone's agreed to, and that mission, the vision, and everything's aligned towards. Um, no, this doesn't align with our ethical
Yeah.
code,
Yeah.
right? Or yes, it does, because otherwise you're going to just convince yourself, you know what? Just this one time, we'll just won't add a watermark
And then
here,
it's
and
a
we won't.
slippery slope.
And it's a slippery
Yeah.
slope. And so, we really went through that exercise and kind of like, do you want to, how do you think about, if people were being reanimated for smoking purposes or
Mm.
for marijuana or for, like there should be certain things that they know up front, like this is something we don't want our brand associated with, or you know what, I don't care if our brand's associated with that, like, but they should have all that up front. And so that's the exercise we did with
And they've
DID.
just been very successful in the latest funding round. So I wish them all the best. They're
Yes.
doing really well, and they're going from strength to strength. So what was number 4, the last one? Then we'll have to call it a
The
day,
last one,
otherwise
number
I'm going to be
4,
in
is a
trouble.
company I'm really excited about, and I'm probably gonna join once we raise enough money, but it's a company called Wopley Technologies,
I love it just
and
because of the name. Did you say wobbly?
Wopley,
Oh, not wobbly. Okay. There was
WOPLLI.
okay because there was a burger place at my university called Wibbly Wobblies, which was fantastic, and then they opened up a second one. They called it Wibbly Wobblies too. So
Nice. Well, this would be Wopley 1. No, this is an a portmanteau of 4 words. So
okay,
it's work, play, learn, live.
okay,
And so it's basically, we're and based on a whole bunch of human-centric architectural principles that he has up on it, that Vikas, the CEO, has up on the website. But Wopley is basically a place where you could have trusted experiences. So think having, a wallet that would enable that basically has all of the uh, pre-programmed things that, like, it basically your privacy perspective of what you want, what you don't want, and your, things that are okay. You basically put in all the rules, and we're building this, so it's why I don't have like a good
you
direct
should talk
like.
to Amari AI, which is another company I
Oh
advise.
yeah, he just published like yesterday. I'll send to you from MKAI. Is that what you said?
No, Amari AI.
Amari AI.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they're basically kind of a digital assistant stroke personal information manager. So they're using AI in a kind of digital assistant type way
Oh,
to
okay.
to
That's
make
cool.
decisions about which companies can use your data based on the rules that you give it, right? So it's not,
Okay, yeah, so
yeah,
it's similar, not
yeah,
not entirely the same, but yeah. So we're obviously like, so I see the mission that they're doing. We have a really big mission that's going to be like, we have a 10-year plan, and try to bring trust back to the internet through a lot of the work that we want to do through Wopley. But so specifically, it's centered around self-sovereign identity, decentralized identifiers, and verifiable credentials. 3 other web technologies that are just all together are really, really exciting, and we're playing around with different new ways in which we could bring trusted experiences
mm.
to people. The same way that Google is, you can Google for things. We would like to be able to, search for your
Find
trusted experience.
non-scams on Amazon would be really
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah, that too. I mean, so
find
there's a lot.
genuine products which aren't counterfeits on Amazon. That
Yes,
if you
exactly
could
that
solve
too.
that problem alone in the next 10 years, that would be a win
Right.
for society, right?
Absolutely. So these are the types of things we're looking on trying to fix. But like basically, it'll all revolve around the human centric identity with SSI at the up front, having assessors who verify things, and then people who want verification of those things. There's like a whole multi marketplace we're building out, and or we have these are our dreams. But this is like a big
Yeah, yeah.
project that I think for the long term we could do a lot of good. So I'm really excited about Wobbly.
Fantastic, fantastic. I will
Yeah.
look into it. I'm not familiar with Wopley. It's the first time I've heard about it, so I'll definitely look into it.
Sure. Yeah, we're not really like we're doing more thought leadership stuff right now. We're not really like the product is not near ready for prime time. So not even close.
I'll have a look, definitely. Anyway,
Excellent.
it's been absolutely lovely, Deborah, as always. We need to end it there, otherwise I'm probably going to be sleeping in my office tonight
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm
because
finally awake.
it's been a long day and I've overrun longer than I should have done. But it's been a great pleasure. I'll have you back at some time, definitely, because we didn't cover anything like as much as I wanted to cover today. We have so much to talk about and
Agreed,
so
right? I
many
feel like we could
aligned
go on for a whole
interests. Yeah,
day.
yeah. So we'll have you back. And yeah, hopefully things will continue to move forward for Troped. Hopefully, the conference in June will go very well. I'm definitely looking forward to the event next week. If it's friendly time zone, last time it wasn't friendly time zone, it was middle of the night for me. But I'll definitely keep an eye on that and see what's going on there. And keep me updated. And obviously, we're involved in a couple of projects together as well, like privacy checks. So hopefully, we'll be able to connect on those as well moving forward.
I'm sure. I'm sure we will. And then I apologize I haven't cursed enough. I I feel
It's
like
okay. I
it's
did it for you. I did it for you. It's fine.
fuck, I didn't curse enough. Yeah. But okay, there now I feel like I've given you kind of what you've promised.
Yes.
A
Thank you very
lively discussion
much.
about
Have a
solutions.
lovely day. Hopefully, you get over your allergies, and I'll speak to you soon.
It's a
Thank you.
work in progress. Bye, Alexander.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Thanks, everybody. Bye bye. That's the end of this week's show. I'll see you on Friday. On Friday, we're doing a new series called Alternatives 2, which actually, if you can introduce me to a bunch of your privacy tech people, it's going to potentially a good opportunity for them to promote their products and services.
Okay.
Because alternatives to the big, the big global corporations, Google Analytics and things like that.
Oh,
So we're
nice.
starting this Friday with Simply Analytics as an alternative to Google Analytics, and we'll be running this long term. So this will be an ongoing series, maybe a couple of months on Friday
I'm
evenings.
really glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think it's important that people understand what alternatives are available. So hopefully I'll see many of you again on Friday. If not, we'll see you again next Wednesday. I don't know who the guest is yet because I'm winging it most of the time, to be honest. So we'll see what happens. All right. Thanks very much, Deborah. Have a great day, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you, everybody
You
else.
too. Bye.
Bye bye.